Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Now, ages ago, probably about a year to be exact, I did some demo videos of this game which is called Duel in the Dark. It's a light strategic contest between the British and the Germans, and it covers the RAF's attempts to bring the war to a successful conclusion in the Allied favour by basically bombing German industry and cities to oblivion, and the German efforts to stop them. Now, at the time, although I'd done a brief playthrough covering about half a game, I did promise that I would do a extended playthrough, an entire mission, but with every single one of the expansions that I could jam in. And this game does have quite a few expansions. So I am playing the base game, of course, you can see that before you, but those of you who know the game will see that I've got the extra add-on map there, and that's for the Baby Blitz expansion, covering the German counterattacks with V1 rockets and the Heinkel 177 over there. There's also quite a few other little expansions I've thrown in. It's mainly additional fighters for the Germans. They now have the Owl, the Yoo-hoo, or whatever the name was. They also have the Wild Sow daylight fighters, which were converted for night use. A bit of a desperation measure, those, but they didn't do too badly. And of course, instead of the single massive raid that the British have in the basic games, you can see from the presence of two Lancasters there, they have two raids. So what I'm going to do is basically just run through an entire game. I have had to make some tough decisions about which of the expansions to leave out, because one of the beauties of this game system is that it allows you a plethora of options. There are so many optional rules you can take on, leave out. But unfortunately, a game with so many options inevitably has some clashes when you try to bring all of them together. So in one or two cases, I have had to exclude a couple of rules, mainly for the reason that they sort of collide head on with other optional rules. So I've made a choice between the two. The other thing is there's quite a lot of rules that relate to full-on campaigns, but I'm only going to be playing a single night's frenetic activity. So I've left those out as well. Now, I have tried to be as fair as I can because, of course, so much of this game is double-blind in nature. So I've programmed the missions for the two big British bomber formations. And likewise, I've prepared the orders cards for the German V weapons and the Heinkel 177. There's no need to do any hidden stuff for the control boards for the German night fighters. They are what they are. So yes, just a word about some of the options that have been chosen for both sides before we get going with the flying. The British, when you plan your raids playing with the expansion, you do have two choices. You can send in two raids, as I've done. If you do that, one of them is a spoof raid, a diversionary attack, if you will, and the other one is the main raid. A difference between them, as the name implies, is that the main raid will score the normal victory points. The spoof raid will still score points, but it won't score as many. So the challenge for the German player is really to try and guess which raid is which, and you don't really know that until you successfully make contact or until they attack a target. So there's that consideration that the Germans have to worry about. On the German side of things, the main new decisions they've had to make is how to conduct their attacks on Britain. The aforementioned V weapons and the Heinkel 177 give them some offensive options which they didn't have in the basic game. But it does also mean that the British do gain some extras by way of their own ground defences. You might be able to see a few of them over there. Yeah, there's quite a few along the south coast, and the British also get another of their deadly mosquitoes, so it doesn't all go Germany's way. In terms of the German defensive strategy, you can see on the British side I've chosen a main raid and a spoof raid. Um, Before I get on to the Germans, I'll just explain that the British do also have the option of a split order card. So you can start with one large bomber formation, and then at some point along its programmed route, you can order it to divide into a main raid and a spoof raid. Or if you wish to keep things simple, you could just have one single formation batter its way through to the target. It keeps the Germans guessing, so that can be quite fun. But I've decided for illustrative purposes, tempting though it was to use the split card, I will have two raids going in. The Germans, most of their decision making is based around where to place their starting fighter squadrons. I tend to always go for a central position in the middle of the board, so that whatever the Allies try, you're best placed to try and deal with it. With regards the ground defences, all these hexagonal bits here, I have gone for a defense in depth rather than following the hard crust strategy. I mean, with hard outer crust, you basically fortify the coastline, knowing that no matter where a raid crosses your coast, it will catch some flak. My favorite strategy with the Germans is very dense concentrations around key cities, and where possible, try to cover possible flight corridors so that you can inflict pain on the incoming bombers as they fly over you and as they go. So there we go. That's the basic strategic situation on this night. It only remains for me to say the weather is looking a bit mixed. There's quite a bit of cloud about, which will affect operations for both sides. There are no thunderstorms, thank goodness. We don't want thunderstorms. That does horrible things to both sides. There is a fair bit of ground fog in annoying places, but I'll cover those as it becomes relevant. So the only other thing to mention before I dive in is the turn order is significantly bulked out. So in the basic game, the British move their mosquitoes first, then the German night fighters react, and then the British move their bomber formations. Here that is still the case, but after the British bomber formation moves, it's the turn of the Heinkel 177 to reveal its move. And then lastly, it's the turn of the V weapons, the doodlebugs. So let us dive straight in. I think rather than waffling too much at you about optional rules that won't make any sense till I demonstrate them, I will leave mentioning them until an event happens that reveals them, or they're triggered somehow by passing aircraft. It depends on what's activated, but I'll pause to discuss it as we go. So, start of the game, and the British moved their mosquitoes first. So, I'm just going to get in close here. I hope my camera stays on the ball. So far, so good. So, the first mosquito, the one up there, is going to be assisting a British bomber formation, but the Germans don't yet know which one, and I would like to keep them guessing. So I am going to fly it out, can gain altitude immediately, and mozzies can move 2 spaces. So it's going to head straight out there and position itself over the channel, equidistant from the 2 British bomber formations. So that will keep the Germans guessing a bit. Now, the other mosquito, the British want to keep on guard duty because they can see there's an awful lot of threatening German activity along Britain's Channel coast. And it's partly why they've heavily fortified the key cities there in terms of anti-aircraft defences. So Falmouth, Weymouth and Bristol are quite well protected on the ground. But it'd be nice if they have some aerial backup too. Now, the great problem the Allies have is they don't know whether these German units have been placed there because They want to very rapidly hit their targets before the British can react? Or is it a giant exercise in misdirection? They can't really afford to take a chance on it because there's victory points at stake. So what they're going to do is take a bit of a chance and a 50-50 guess. They're going to have the fighters based in Birmingham take off. And give me a moment while I wrestle with these things. Some of these are stiffer than others. So like its counterpart, this mosquito is going to climb straight to high altitude, and it's going to position itself over Falmouth. So over to the British bombers. Let's go charging in over there, and I'll give you all vertigo as I try and focus on these guys. So I'll start with the formation up there. You'll notice that the aircraft are color-coded, and I have used the counters that secretly indicate whether it's a main raid or a spoof raid. You see, they match the color coding. That's how you keep track of them. I have just placed those next to the mission programming cards so I know which pile belongs to which bomber. So starting with the formation over there, their first card is a eastward move, straight eastward move. So they are going to climb to high altitude. And no, they are not, because I have made my first mistake. Apologies. Serious miscourtesy to the Germans. Now that the mosquitoes have moved, it is the turn of the German fighters. That was embarrassing. I mentioned this turn order at the during the pre-flight briefing. What the heck am I doing? So, as far as the German night fighters can tell, the British are on the move already. That mozzie over there strongly indicates that a raid is on the way. Now, they don't know quite where or when, but they're not going to take any chances. So, going in squadron order, Squadron 1 is going to take off, and they are just going to climb rapidly where they are to gain high altitude. And that will take their fuel to 6. Just a reminder, and also for those who might not know this game very well or at all, the only aircraft that are subject to fuel limitations are the German night fighters. Squadron 2, given its proximity to the Mosquito, is going to do exactly the same thing. And like Squadron 1, they burn fuel doing it. I think on the whole, it's probably tempting just to get everybody up. Squadron 3 could try joining Squadron 1, but the wind direction, which is indicated on the weather marker here, the wind is against them, so they will burn more fuel and they won't go very quickly. So what Squadron 3 might do is what to do? They will just climb to high altitude. It might not seem the most offensive thing to do in terms of stopping the British, but they would burn so much fuel if they tried advancing westwards. It's probably better for them to just mark time here. By the way, Squadron 3 has some special fuel that lets them move extra fast, but it's a one-shot trick. Once you've done it, special fuel's gone and it's out of the game. Just something I have to remember when it comes to shuffling Squadron 3 about. What about Squadron 4? They're based in the Ruhr. If you can see anything of the Ruhr underneath that huge stack of defensive markers I've placed there. Now, this squadron has a few more options. What they might do is try and gain some distance and join Squadron 1. So they're going to fly in a northwesterly direction and go there. Now, they're not quite flying directly into the wind, so they only spend 2 fuel lines getting there. And of course, this is a big Dornier rather than a Messerschmitt 110, so it's got a lot more fuel to play around with. And lastly, we have the Heinkel 219s of Squadron 5 over here. They might do the same thing Squadron 4 just did. They can go link up with Squadron 3. Now, note that both Squadron 4 and Squadron 5 are at low altitude because rather than remaining in their hex and spending all their energy climbing to high altitude, they've decided to just move to another hex. So that costs it a bit of fuel, but it's got plenty to spare. So that is the German night. Oh dear, my camera's gone a bit out of focus. Whoops. So that was the German night fighters, and now, having finally curbed my excitement, I can get on with the British bombers. So bomber formation in the north is going eastwards, and they have a choice of climbing to high or low altitude, but once committed, the heavy bombers must stick to the same altitude throughout the mission. I think given the density of German defences, we're going to go high. So we take off and we head out. What about the other British force? They are not going anywhere. Now, this is a very cunning tactic the British can play. Because the Germans are busy guessing, the temptation for the German player is to scramble his aircraft as quickly as possible, especially if a mosquito is making threatening noises on the periphery. However, if they take off too soon, as you've seen, they burn fuel pretty much whatever they do. And by staying on the ground, that British raid at least has sort of made them blink first. So by the time those Brits do take off, the Germans will have expended a fair amount of fuel. Very, very cunning trick on the part of the Brits there to stagger their formations a bit. But what about the Germans? It's their turn now to see whether they can pull that kind of a stunt, and it is the turn of that Heinkel 177 over there. Oh, let's just angle the camera a bit more. Maybe. You going to do it? Yes, you're going to do it. So, like the British bombers, the Heinkel 177 has compass cards of its own. So we're going to turn it over. Oh, goodness, that's quick. That tells me that the German player is going to bomb the very next hex he enters. So the British hunch was right. It's either going to be a raid on Falmouth or Weymouth. Let's find out which one it is. Northwest. They are hitting Falmouth. So bringing this over there. Sorry, that angle is a little bit weird, but never mind, we'll live with it. You can tell how big this game is physically. My poor camera stand is straining a little. So the Germans are going to go in at high altitude, and it generates our first encounter of the night when they run slap into the British mosquitoes over there. So what happens when an aircraft enters an enemy zone? Well, first of all, let's look at it from the British perspective. So working down the chart, we have a Heinkel 177 running into a mosquito, and the British do have a flak gun down there. So that's 1 victory point for each. It is a crescent moon tonight, so they don't get any additional points. It's not summer. There is cloud, so the British do lose a victory point, so it's back down to 1. However, they also have radar there helping the mosquito, so the points go up to 3. And they have a searchlight, which can help It can help either the mozzie or the flak gun, but not both. But still, it's brought the British total up to 4. Any other applicable modifiers? Note the Germans were very sensibly flying at high altitude, so the Brits don't get a bonus point. The Brits don't get a bonus point for their anti-aircraft guns. And the mozzie is not flying low, so there's no penalty. So there we go. The British get 4 victory points. Hold that number in mind because the Germans are going to score some as well. So the Germans, looking at the little town crest that is on the map, they see that Falmouth is worth 4 victory points. So that's how much they start with as a base number. As with them, the weather is not on their side. In fact, a crescent moon means their total of 4 goes down to 2. The clouds reduce it even further to 0. Luckily, there's no ground fog. The searchlight actually makes it a -1, so they're not having a good raid at all here. Any other things to worry about? No. And because they weren't flying low, they don't get that bonus. So we've done our 2 comparisons. The British total was 4 victory points and the German total was -1. So zooming over here, that is the German side of the score chart. This is the British. The British have a very respectable 5 victory points. That's not bad. Now, normally the Germans would get some bonuses for every turn they evade the mosquito, but unfortunately, because the British guessed right on a 50-50 chance, the Germans have flown straight into that interception, so that's not so great for them. So that's the Heinkel 177 for this turn. The very last thing, what about the V weapons? I'm just going to flip over the German launch card. The Germans are keeping the British guessing as well. If any of those were illuminated with the corresponding colour, then that V rocket would launch. But this turn, there isn't going to be any V weapon launch. So the British will just have to be left biting their nails and seeing what's going to happen. So there we go. That is one complete turn of Duel in the Dark with pretty much all the expansions in play. So you can see there's a lot going on. Now we will carry on with this because admittedly turn 1 tends to be a bit of a quiet one. The Germans have actually pulled a bit of a blinder by chucking a bombing raid in. Very much a lightning raid just across the channel, and then they'll be expecting to get back again. So I will leave this one here. What I'm hoping to do so that these videos don't get too long is that unless I rattle through them very quickly, I am going to basically be playing 1 turn per recording, and we'll see how we get on with that. As the Brits get closer to their objectives, things might heat up and the length of the videos might increase, but we'll see how that goes. For the moment, the night is promising to be very interesting. The Germans really need to try and find out quickly which of these 2 attacks is the main raid and which is the spoof raid. And most importantly, where on earth are they going? Because the British have a huge amount of choice. And if they have programmed the route to take themselves past the main centres of German resistance, they could potentially do a fair bit of damage. Conversely, they may well be heading in for an absolutely terrible night. It depends on where they're going. The British have much less guessing to do. The Germans have basically shot their bolt with the night bombing now. The Brits now know exactly what they were intending to hit. But that mozzie isn't free yet because it still has to stay on guard against wherever the heck these little guys are going to be going later in the turn. So where that is going to be, we shall see when I continue with the next video. For the moment, it only remains for me to say a huge thank you, guys. It's always a pleasure to see you all. And for those who requested it, I'm so sorry this video is coming so late after I promised I would do this. But hey, it's here and I'm very glad to be doing it. A big hello to my long-suffering but ever-patient veterans. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me, and I hope you're enjoying this series. We'll see how things go as the mission progresses. To any people who are visiting my channel for the first time, you're very, very welcome. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if it's Duel in the Dark that brought you here, please do have a look at the other videos I've created for this rather splendid game. If it's wargaming in general, like everyone else, you're more than welcome. Have a wander around the channel. I hope you find other things that you like. But whoever you are and wherever you're watching from, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time you guys take to watch these. And even more, I do appreciate all the wonderful feedback. You guys are absolutely brilliant, and it's really great to be part of this community we've put together on this channel. So keep the comments, queries, suggestions, etc. coming. And as always, I will try and respond to you as soon as I can. I look forward to seeing you all in the next video, which I hope to be doing very soon. In the meantime, do take care. Thank you and bye.